Let's talk about a 40k lore iceberg, if only to stave off the inevitable rant about Magnus the Red that will be coming with the Thousand Suns video. I found this handy little Reddit post while browsing around looking for video ideas, and I thought it was as good an excuse as any to start a short little series going into some lore that you might not know as much about as you'd expect. Except this first video, you'll probably know all about it, but please watch it anyway. Before we get into the meat of the video, I do just want to take a moment to thank my channel members, Vort, Cersei and Victory Kaiser, for supporting me. Also, yes, I have a face now. On with the video. Probably the most iconic part about Warhammer, at least the 40k side of things, Space Marines are the poster boys that you see absolutely everywhere, including the free starter mini GW gives you to get you hooked. They were also the subject of my first video. God, that was a quick 8 months. Anyway, Space Marines are pretty much genetically enhanced super soldiers who generally tend towards the more autistic end of the social spectrum. They are about 8 feet tall, scarily fast, and strong enough to punch through the sides of tanks. None of which is reflected in the tabletop, where they are essentially made of wet tissue paper. They were originally grouped into legions, each many thousands strong and led by their Primarch, though in the modern day, the ones loyal to the Imperium of Man are organised into chapters made up of 1,000 Marines each. Some of them go above that, and wander around the galaxy defending it from aliens and the Space Marines that aren't loyal to the Imperium. The Poster Boy sub-faction of the Poster Boy faction, the Ultramarines chapter of Space Marines, are the blue guys you see on every box of Space Marines. Or most of them anyway. I find that they tend to get a lot more hate in the community than they really deserve. Probably as a holdover from when Matt Ward did a lot of their writing and made them just complete Mary Sues. They're a lot cooler and more interesting now that they're just a generally effective jack-of-all-trades chapter, with more of a focus on diplomacy and statesmanship than most. They've also got a vaguely Roman flavour that I'm a huge fan of as a classical history dweeb. One of my new favourite factions, the Necron used to be a living race, though due to their home planet being located about 4 feet from the surface of its sun, they all developed super cancer. The gods of space used that as leverage to trick them into giving up their souls and becoming unthinking murder machines. Then, they fought a war and won against the old ones, before shattering the gods of space into shards that they use as batteries, and having a big nap until the current day of the setting. Some of them want to go back to being living beings with souls and all that. Some of them actually quite like being immortal, and some of them are completely and utterly mad. I made a video recently, you can watch that here, going a bit more into depth on them, but I think what I've just said serves as a decent summary. Oh, and they also have a device they can use to send any sun they want into supernova. The Orks are a lot of fun. Created by those old ones I just mentioned as a weapon to help fight the Necron, they were originally far larger than they are currently, and in possession of far greater technology. Since then, they have devolved into still pretty big, all things considered, football hooligans with some rather primitive technology, at least by the standards of some of the other 40k races. Despite that, they're still a huge threat to the galaxy, being among the most numerous of the enemies of mankind. They also have some form of Gestalt psychic field. The more orcs there are in a given area, the bigger and stronger they become, and the better their technology gets. The limiter that GW put on them, to stop them from just being a galaxy-ending threat, is that they don't often form into huge armies, or wars as the orcs call them, being just as happy to fight within themselves as with the other races. Another race created by the old ones, the Eldar, are pretty much space elves. They have the standard elf vibe of once ruling the entire galaxy and now being scattered, slowly dying out, and just generally past their prime. What sets them apart from, say, Tolkien's elves is that the decline of their empire was caused by the Eldar literally fucking a chaos god into existence that is now hell-bent on chowing down on their souls. The youngest race in 40k, at least in-universe, and maybe out of it, the model range is relatively new, I think it came out in 3rd. Anyway, the Tau are somewhat controversial in the 40k fandom. A lot of people don't consider them grimdark enough, and honestly I would agree. If you don't consider concentration camps, forced sterilization, pheromonal manipulation, and a general join us or die mentality grimdark, then the Tau are perfectly morally good. But jokes aside, the Tau Empire is made up of several minor Xenos races, such as Vespids or Kroot, led by the Tau, all working towards the greater good of a brighter future for all involved. And there is absolutely no mind control involved. Please stop asking. They are also the closest you can get to Gundam while staying within 40k, so that's cool. They don't have Psykers or faster than light travel though, so that's not cool. Heresy jokes are something that have kind of been overplayed in the fandom, and honestly even before that point I just never really found them that funny. But basically, if you've ever been to a gaming store where people are playing 40k, you've probably heard someone scream about heresy or calling for an Inquisitor at the top of their lungs. That's kind of all I've got for this one. Chaos as a concept is a bit complicated to explain, and I'm also not exactly sure why it's above the warp in this Iceberg. So basically there are 4 main Chaos Gods, and countless minor ones, each formed from the emotions felt by every sentient creature in the galaxy. Khorne is the embodiment of anger, Nurgle of disease and despair, Slaanesh is horny, and Tzeentch is the god of being a dick. They're each constantly fighting each other to become the most powerful being in existence, and corrupting the mortal races to their sides in order to empower themselves. They also paint these mortal followers in their favourite colour whenever they have the opportunity. The Tyranids are a Xenos race made up of these little bug creatures that came from somewhere outside of the Milky Way galaxy, which is where 40k is set. I don't know if I've mentioned that yet. They are controlled by a Gestalt psychic consciousness known as the Hive Mind, and have the ability to create new bugs that incorporate the abilities of any living being they have previously eaten. They form into giant hive fleets that roam around the galaxy, stripping worlds of biomass, and also generate some sort of psychic interference known as the Shadow in the Warp, that scrambles communications and blocks warp travel wherever they go. In summary, little bug, om nom nom. The Admech are a faction within the Imperium of Man, formed up of people who want to be robots from Mars. If you've ever seen those memes about the flesh is weak, then these guys are where that comes from. They run the Forge worlds spread throughout the galaxy that are the main producers of weaponry and technology for the Imperium, but they also don't like to invent anything new, unless their name is Belisarius Cawl, but he's a complete other issue. Instead, they create new technology by rediscovering old STCs, which are basically patterns or blueprints from thousands of years ago when they were actually allowed to invent new things. The Inquisition are the secret police of the Imperium of Mankind, wandering the galaxy and making sure that nobody is doing anything chaotic or too independent. It is split into Ordos, each of which guards the Imperium against a specific threat, and most of which are named something incredibly self-explanatory. The Ordo Xenos focuses on fighting Xenos, the Ordo Malleus focuses on demons and other chaosy stuff, and the Ordo Hereticus focuses on internal threats. There are also a whole bunch of minor Ordos, including the Ordo Kronos, who just kind of disappeared from the face of the galaxy for a while. I'm sure they're fine. The Imperial Guard, or Astra Militarum, are the main military force of the Imperium, formed up of largely unaugmented baseline humans. While there is probably somewhere around 1 million loyalist Astartes pottering about the galaxy, there are billions if not trillions of guardsmen. As such, they're viewed as pretty much expendable by most of the Imperium's commanders, and mostly function as garrisons for particularly troublesome worlds, or as the first line of attack on a battlefield while they wait for Astartes support. They have some really cool tank models, but the baseline troops are just so tiny. The Sisters of Battle are the main military arm of the Ordo Hereticus of the Inquisition. Nuns with guns, you get the idea. They are somewhere between baseline humans and Space Marines in terms of augmentation. They wear power armor, and they love religion and flamethrowers. They also have some of the coolest models in the entire tabletop. I mean, look at this, or this, or this. The Death Corps of Krieg are a sub-faction of the Imperial Guard, who adore spades and siege warfare. A couple thousand years ago, in the current day of the setting, the planet Krieg rose in rebellion against the Imperium, starting a long and very drawn-out war that led to the planet becoming a burned-out radioactive husk whose people live in underground hive cities. The Death Corps seek to atone for their treachery by dying in combat, though attempting to achieve a given tactical objective in the process, rather than just throwing themselves at the enemy. Due to the state of their homeworld, they all wear gas masks and excel in siege and attrition warfare. They're also all test tube babies, or maybe clones. Hive worlds are the main population centres of the Imperium. As the name suggests, each of these worlds contains multiple hive cities, multi-layered constructs that are many kilometres tall and house billions of civilians. They are also incredibly hierarchical, with the nobility living at the top of the spires, sometimes even above the smoke and smog that often cover these hellscapes, and the lower down you go, the worse the living conditions get. The sheer population density of hive worlds means that they also provide industrial manpower for the Imperium, though they are not nearly as productive as the Forge worlds of the Admech. Genestealers are a specific breed of Tyranids that are particularly horrific. They range ahead of the main hive fleets and take up residence on a populated world. Once there, they infect someone with Tyranid genetic material that mind controls them to love the Genestealer, and means that any children they have will be born as these weird half Tyranid, half whatever the other race was hybrids. Eventually, once enough people have been infected by the Genestealer, the Tyranids will have spread across the entire world, forming a cult and producing a psychic beacon that draws the true hive fleets to the planet. Any of the hybrids, or people involved with the cult, will view the fleet as a saviour or as a benevolent god, though this doesn't stop them from being devoured for biomass when it arrives. The Golden Throne is a huge life support system that is keeping the Emperor of Mankind alive, after he got shit on by his son 10,000 years ago. It also functions as a psychic amplifier, allowing the Emperor to keep the Astronomicon alight, with the help of 10,000 slaves being sacrificed a day. The Astronomicon is a huge psychic beacon that the navigators of the Imperium use to find their way around the warp during FTL travel. Without the throne, the Emperor would die, and the Imperium would lose the ability of warp travel, which makes it rather awkward that it is currently in the process of failing. The Primarchs were essentially demigods, created from the genetic material of the Emperor 10,000 years ago, and they formed the base gene template for their own legions of Space Marines. Each Primarch embodied a part of Big E's personality, Sanguinius being his nobility, Guilliman his political side, and Magnus his superiority complex. Originally there were 20, or 21 technically, but that's not important. Though 2 failed. We don't know how they got expunged from the Imperial record. It must have been pretty bad, whatever it was. Of the remaining 18, 9 fell to chaos under the banner of Horus Lupercal, and we still know about them, so... Regardless, the remaining loyalist Primarchs slowly disappeared in the years following the defeat of Horus, while the chaotic ones have generally ascended to demonhood in service of one god or another. Remember the gods of space I mentioned in the Necron section? Those are the Catachan. They were formed with the creation of the universe, and potted about for a bit after it formed, eating stars, before they found the Necron and graduated to eating souls instead. They each seem to vaguely correspond to a physical element of the material universe, somewhat like the Chaos Gods and Emotions, and are also incredibly difficult to kill. The only one to ever be truly killed, who seemed to be the Catachan of Hunger, cursed the Necron when he died, and gave rise to the Flayer virus, a plague that drives any Necron affected with it mad with hunger, which is quite a problem when you don't have a mouth or a digestive system. Luckily, most of them were shattered into Duracells by the Necron. Not all of them, though. Everyone's favourite Necron, Trazyn the Infinite, spends literally all of his time trying to capture artefacts for his museum. It is worth noting that these artifacts also include people kept in stasis fields, along with at least one Krork, which was what the ancient, especially hefty ancestors of the Orks were called, and a perfect uncorrupted clone of Fulgrim, one of the Primarchs that fell to Chaos. That one is of particular interest to me personally. I cannot wait for the day we get to see Clonegrim at the head of a new loyalist legion of Emperor's children fighting Fulgrim and the Corrupted Third. Just a personal pipe dream there. Speaking of the Emperor's children, the Traitor Legions were the 9 legions led by the Chaos-corrupted Primarchs during the Heresy. Following the defeat of Horus at the end of the Heresy, they fled to the Warp Rift known as the Eye of Terror, where they pretty much remained until the creation of the Cicatrix Maledictum, aside from the odd raid into real space. Since the creation of the Cicatrix Maledictum, they have a bit more freedom and have kind of just been around the galaxy. They also have a bit of a superiority complex over the modern-day Space Marines, referring to them as Thin Bloods, presumably because the genetic processes used to create Space Marines have deteriorated since the internment of Emps on the Golden Throne, though I don't know that for sure. So, you know how I said that the Loyalist Primarchs disappeared after the Heresy? Well, 2 came back. I think this Iceberg was made before the Lion did, so it just mentions Guilliman, but 2 are back now. Guilliman, Primarch of the Ultramarines, was the first to return, given a fancy new suit of armour and a hot Eldar girlfriend. The Lion, Primarch of the Dark Angels, came back after that as a Disney princess. The Warp is an alternative dimension where the Chaos Gods, demons, and the souls of dead people live, and is also what enables faster-than-light travel for humanity. It functions as essentially a mirror of real space, or the material universe, though constructed from pure thought and emotion. Psykers are space wizards. They can tap into the power of the Warp to do magic, pretty much. They also tend to get ostracized from polite human society, despite being literally the coolest thing ever. Catachan, or Catachan if you want to be incorrect, is a jungle world in the Imperium that produces the Catachan Jungle Fighters Regiment of the Imperial Guard, who are viewed as the strongest and most dangerous type of unaugmented human in the galaxy. I believe there's a few times where they get mistaken for Space Marines, so these guys are big. Catachan is among the most dangerous worlds in the Imperium, mainly because of the amount of dangerous wildlife on there, some of which are most likely feral Tyranids that lost contact with the hive mind. Abhumans are specific sub-races of humanity that have evolved or mutated in order to adapt to the extreme environmental conditions of various planets, to the point that they are markedly distinct from standard humans. You have Ratlings, who are basically hobbits, Ogryns, who are, well, ogres, and Beastmen, who are beastmen, men with goat heads. Also catgirls too. Custodes are basically Space Marines plus. They are taller, stronger and smarter, though much less numerous as they are individually gene-crafted from infancy, rather than by just slapping some extra organs into a teenager. They served as the personal bodyguards and handmaidens to the Emperor before, well, you know. And since then, they have served as the guardians of the Imperial Palace on Terra, and specifically the Golden Throne. I made a full video on them as well. And finally, for now at least, the Dark Eldar are a sub-race of the Eldar who fled into the Webway, basically their own carved-out section of the Warp, after the fall of their empire. They discovered that they can stop Slaanesh from claiming their souls if they inflict pain on the other mortal races. So they basically run around being dicks as much as possible in order to stop themselves from getting eaten. They also really love flesh crafting and are well overdue a model refresh. So that was the top section of the 40k lore Iceberg. There will be another 4 parts to this series, slowly getting more and more obscure as we go on. And honestly, there's some stuff at the bottom that I have literally no idea how to even approach researching, so that's going to be interesting. Regardless, if you've made it this far in the video, thank you so much, it really does mean a lot. Like, subscribe, all the rest, and I'll see you all in the next video.